Her scream never left her throat. Only a dry, painful gasp escaped. Elena lay crumpled in the tall grass, her dress ripped and dirty, skin covered in dust and blood. The fierce Missouri sun burned her bare arms until blisters rose. Flies buzzed around the deep cut on her hip where a knife had entered. She pressed her hand against it, but the blood kept coming. She had run for miles without shoes, chased and terrified, the world spinning from heat and fear. When her legs finally failed, she dragged herself through the grass until she reached a ranch fence. Then darkness took her. Thomas Reed was checking the south pasture on horseback when he noticed vultures circling. He thought a calf had died. The air waved and bent from the heat, but what lay on the ground was no animal. It was a woman, breathing so faintly he almost missed it. Her dark hair was full of sticks and burrs, her lips dry and white, a dark red patch spreading beneath her pressed hand. He slid off his horse and knelt beside her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened a little, sharp and full of pain, yet strong. "Open the cloth, now," she rasped. Thomas did not wait. He carefully tore the seam of her dress. A long, ugly knife wound showed just above her thigh, serious, but not deadly yet. He poured water from his canteen over it. She cried out, part anger, part helpless pain. He folded his bandana, pressed one half against the cut, and tied the other tightly above it to slow the bleeding. "You'll live," he said softly. She did not answer with words. Her trembling fingers closed around his wrist like iron. Her eyes told him everything. She did not trust him, but she wanted to survive. Thomas lifted her onto his horse. She weighed almost nothing, and rode fast for home. Dust filled his mouth and the hooves thundered beneath him. He did not know her name or who had tried to kill her, but he knew one thing for certain. If he left her there, she would not last another hour. By the time they reached the small cabin, her heartbeat felt weak against his arm. He carried her inside and laid her on the narrow cot. Fresh blood had already soaked through the cloth again. Just before she fainted, one faint word left her lips. "Child." Thomas stood still. Somewhere out there, a child was waiting for this wounded woman. He looked toward the shimmering fields. Whoever had done this to her might come looking. And what kind of man left a woman to bleed and die under the open sky? The cabin smelled of pine and old pipe smoke. Thomas cleaned the dirt from her face with cool water. Her eyes stayed closed, but her breathing was fast and hot with fever. He had stitched wounds on soldiers long ago, yet never on a woman, never on someone who looked so completely alone. He washed the cut again, poured a little whiskey to clean it, and she gasped awake for a moment. He packed the wound with dried herbs and sewed it closed as neatly as his rough hands allowed. "Easy," he whispered. "You're safe now." She opened her eyes, dark brown and sharp as new steel. Safe was clearly a word she had stopped believing in long ago. Her hand moved toward the knife on his belt. He gently slid it farther away and met her stare. "I won't hurt you." After a long moment, she let her head fall back against the pillow. The sun crawled across the porch boards, sending golden lines through the cracks. Cicadas sang in the trees. Thomas changed the bandage twice, used clean strips from an old shirt, and left a tin cup of water by her hand. Hours later she woke, drank every drop, and watched him without blinking. "My name is Thomas," he said quietly. After a pause she answered, voice small and rough. Lena. He gave a small smile. Good name. For several days they shared the cabin in careful silence. He worked the ranch from sunrise to sunset. She sat on the porch with her leg wrapped, watching. Sometimes he heard her speak softly in a language he did not understand. One evening, when the light turned orange and gentle, she finally spoke more than 2 words together. They took my son. Her voice shook. Victor Ramsey wants the land that belonged to my husband's family. He killed my husband when I would not sign the papers. Then he came for me. My boy is only 4. He is still waiting. Thomas had no words. He only listened while the crickets started their night song. It had been years since anyone had needed him. The war took his younger brother and left him only empty fields and memories. Since then he had lived alone and asked for nothing. Now someone else's life rested in his hands again. That night the moon was bright and the grass silver. Lena moved in her sleep and whispered a name. Victor. Thomas sat up straight. He knew that name. If it was the same Victor Ramsey, a man who once wore the same uniform but sold his honor for money, then the quiet days were over. Quiet. Next morning, Lena could walk with a limp to the porch. Thomas found her there, holding the coffee he had left for her. She gave him one small nod, more thanks than any speech. During the day, she followed him while he repaired fences and checked cattle. Her limp grew smaller each hour. Sometimes she handed him tools without being asked. Sometimes she simply stood and watched the wind move the grass. A gentle peace settled over the ranch, the kind that almost never lasts. That evening they sat together by the corral. Thomas rolled a cigarette and offered her one. She shook her head. He laughed quietly. Smart woman. These things kill slower than bullets, but just as sure. She smiled, small but true. Then her face changed. She looked toward the dark tree line. 2 nights ago I saw riders on the far ridge. Victor has men all over. They pay for news. They follow tracks. Thomas looked and saw faint hoof prints in the dust. Fresh. He won't stop, she said. Thomas felt cold settle in his stomach. He remembered Victor Ramsey from the war, a man who smiled while doing cruel things. That night distant thunder rolled, though no rain came. Thomas sat by the window with his shotgun. Lena was already awake in the dark. They did not speak. They simply understood each other. 2 people who had seen too much darkness. At dawn, she said, I will leave today. I don't want to bring danger here. He shook his head. Too late. Danger already knocked. Something long asleep woke inside him. The part that once believed some fights are worth everything. He loaded his rifle and said, If they come, they chose the wrong ranch. The next day was hotter than ever. Thomas was near the barn when crows began calling. Crows did not gather without reason. He walked quietly to the ridge and saw them. 5 riders coming slow but steady. The man in front sat tall, hat low, rifle across his chest. Even at a distance, Thomas knew the way he moved. Victor Ramsey. Same man, same cold heart he remembered from years ago. Thomas returned to the barn. Lena was brushing the mare. They're coming, he said. How many? 5. She looked straight at him. Then we make them pay. They worked fast and quiet. He gave her a rifle. Her hands were steady. She had done this before. They built cover from hay bales and old wagon wheels. Sweat ran into their eyes, but fear did not touch them. Victor stopped 50 yards away and called out, "Thomas Reed, you have something that belongs to me." Thomas answered from behind the hay, rifle ready. "She never belonged to you, Victor." Victor laughed the same ugly laugh Thomas remembered. "Always the hero. Step aside and I might let you live." Thomas fired once. One rider fell. Then the air filled with smoke and noise. Lena leaned against the barn wall, aimed carefully even through pain, and dropped another man with one shot. A bullet tore Thomas's sleeve and blood ran warm down his arm, but he kept shooting. Splinters exploded around them. Victor tried to circle around. Thomas stopped him with another shot. When the smoke drifted away, only Victor remained on his horse, blood on his face, hate in his eyes. Lena stepped into the open, rifle steady, eyes burning. "You hurt my child. You hurt me." Victor opened his mouth, maybe to beg, maybe to curse. She fired. He fell and did not move again. Quiet returned, heavy and strange. Fresh blood showed on Lena's bandage, but she stood straight. They both knew killing Victor Ramsey would not end the trouble. It would only change its shape. But for now, the sun shone and they were alive. They buried the others quickly and rode east before anyone else could come. When the dust settled, Thomas and Lena stood together. The fear that had followed her for months was gone. That night she sat on the cabin porch and hummed. Not a sad song anymore. Something soft and hopeful. The next morning they rode toward Oklahoma, where her son waited with her people. Thomas planned to leave her there and return home alone. But the closer they came, the more wrong that plan felt. At the Chickasaw camp, a small boy saw her from far away and ran shouting, "Mama!" Lena slid from the horse and fell to her knees. The boy threw himself into her arms. Thomas turned away for a moment so no one would see the tears in his eyes. Later, when the boy slept, Lena walked to Thomas. "He is my whole world," she said. "I know." She took his hand. "You gave us back our world. Stay, just for a while." He stayed. Days became weeks. He helped repair houses, dug a new well, taught the boy to ride without a saddle. In the evenings, they ate by the fire. Often the child fell asleep against Lena, and Thomas caught her watching him with gentle eyes. One morning, the little boy ran up with a wildflower in his fist. "For you, Papa," he said proudly. Thomas knelt, took the flower, and laughed through sudden tears. "Thank you, son." Lena stood in the doorway, smiling, tears shining on her cheeks. They were no longer two broken people the world had thrown away. They were a family. Maybe that is the true story of the West. Not the guns or the wide empty land or the endless fighting, but the quiet miracles when wounded hearts find each other and choose to heal together. So tell me, friend, if life offered you one more chance at love and family, would you reach for it, or would you turn away? If this story warmed your heart, leave a like and subscribe for more tales from long ago. Now go fix yourself a cup of something warm, settle back, and let me know, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from tonight?